If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe, and also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
With the son of the legendary Rob Skiba. Jeremiah Skiba, what's up?
With my great and insightful co-host, Mr. Jake Graham.
Dude, someone should do conspiracy news. It would be 10 times better than what you see on television.
It's like I don't even want to wake up.
He's on a quest for truth.
Welcome to Truth or Con. Our vision is to grow the largest and most profound exposition of truth in the modern age. Here, no truth is beyond reproach. An amazing opportunity for you guys to connect with one another, for us to ask hard questions for the presenters that are coming up, because we're all here with a common goal, to seek after truth together, seek after truth together.
Truthers come, welcome to the con. Largest, bestest we've ever been on. World stage, amazing speakers. Lifting the veil, we the truth seekers. Truth or con, we're on. Come along. Join the truth or con. Join the truth or con. Speakers exposing the dark, the shadow, the arc. From start to the finish, the feeling is real. Concealing is peeling, revealing the dealings. Uncovering truth, it's a ride to the ceiling. Wake up, what do you see? Could it be? Who are we? No, not me, it's all a conspiracy. It's a smoke screen, and I don't mean the weed. When I say these days, nothing's as it seems. From big pharma to big tech to big food to big banks. Big dudes making big moves. Keep you down and depressed in the press, cause your heart is heavy and your brain is confused. The Bilderbergs and the Rothschilds and the Bushes and the Clintons. Man, the whole system is wild, and it takes a village, they protect the child. Take the vaccine, well, ain't that convenient? It's a circle jerk, bunch of perverts, elitists, running the world, pulling the strings like puppets. They was just waiting for they call another minute, proving out the truth uncovered. It's been going on for centuries. I don't trust the news or the TV or the priest. They say the Bible was written by man, so who do you trust? I don't trust the government, the voice of the people. They hear it, they fear it, they feel it. We nearly at the limit. With truth is this limitless. Truth is this limitless. Truth, we the truth seekers. This is Truth or Con. Join us, truthers come. Welcome to the con. Largest, bestest we've ever been on. World stage, amazing speakers. Lifting the veil, we the truth seekers. Truth or Con. War. Come along. Join the Truth or Con. Join the Truth or Con.
Bigger and better than ever before.
Hey, Skiba News Nation family. Today we have a very special, two guests, Jake, kind of like me and you, but the Nephilim Death Squad. And I'd like to welcome them to Skiba News Nation. It's an honor to have both of you guys here.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I didn't know that, you were also like a sunglasses rings guy. I'm a sunglasses rings guy. I feel like we have a lot in common.
Yeah, me and Jake feel I feel a little bit more like laid back energy. I like that. Yeah.
It's a prescription.
It's an interesting dynamic. Very similar. Also love your Hitler painting.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having us. I appreciate it.
Big fan of Hitler.
Yeah, you got to explain it, Jeremiah.
So, so like I said earlier, GPT, it's one of my favorite things that GPT ever made me. And then it never made me anything cool ever again. Actually, maybe one cool thing, I will say, but I'll have to hang that on the other side of me so you guys can see it. But it's I don't know. I said, can you do a picture of Helen Keller and my uncle? And I put a beard on Adolf, and so it did it. And then I said, okay, can you take the beard off and just leave the mustache? And it did. And I was like, oh. But it was all like kind of weird. So I said, can you please fix it? And it said, I can only make a look-alike. I said, fine. And it did. And it looks just like him.
So you tricked it. Was it in terms of like a violation of the terms of policy or whatever? Like it wouldn't make Hitler?
I guess. And I'm not doing a Zeke Howe right now. I'm trying to make my camera stop moving.
It's like, I guess, dude.
My heart goes out to you guys. So, man, so funny. For those in our audience who may not know who you are, can you tell me a little bit about what you guys do?
Yeah, dude. So we, we focus on conspiracy through the Christian lens, a lot of comedy. And I think, it's one of those things where we were talking about it before the show. A lot of this stuff is kind of like black pilling, as far as like all the conspiracies, you look into the abyss looks back at you, it makes you sad. And so we try to inject a lot. It's just in our nature too, to inject a lot of comedy into the situation. I think it's also a good vehicle for making a thing palatable.
It's a good way to make a point. I think one of the things that we did at the end of the show towards the last couple of months, maybe the last year or so, we'd ask our guests, like, are you having fun? Mm. And that's a super important question. Yep. And we're kind of asking, but we should ask them now.
Like, that's a good question. Yeah. Are you guys having fun?
Are you guys having fun with what you're doing? Because if you're not, maybe you should
why are you doing it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I always have fun. I try to make every situation into a good one, even if I'm in the middle of nowhere. My wife said that's why she married me. So I'm like a dog, but I'm a cat person. So I'm always looking for the
same guy. We're like the same guy.
I thought he didn't want to answer.
I have
3 cats. Okay.
Yeah. And the big one is the fan favorite is Charlie, and he makes regular appearances. So he might even jump up on this table and knock everything down. Last night he had a bag stuck on his head, knocked every studio light down and all of our equipment. And I was like, dude, really? And it was a fun experience. So you guys are Nephilim, like researchers, and know a lot about Nephilim. And I'm sure you guys know who my dad was.
Yeah.
Rob Skiba. He was like one of the OGs, and he was murdered by the medical system. Yeah. But me and Jake are going somewhere really cool, and we wanted to share it with you guys because it has to do with Nephilim, and it has to do with Texas, and it's pretty awesome. And we left you on a cliffhanger before we started recording. So I'm gonna play this for you guys. Tell me.
Okay, cool.
The Rockwall, Genesis 6, and the giant skull of Rockwall, Texas. All right, family, tonight we're going to be going somewhere most history books refuse to go. Because beneath a quiet Texas town, there's a wall that shouldn't exist. And a skull that was never supposed to be talked about. And this mystery is Rockwall, Texas. And yes, we're going to be getting into Genesis 6. The wall is real. Let's get this out of the way immediately. The rock wall is real. This isn't speculation or theory. In the 1850s, settlers digging wells hit a stone. But not a random stone. They found straight lines, right angles, layered stone blocks, walls intersecting at corners. Not one wall, multiple. So convincing the settlers didn't hesitate. They named the town Rockwall. Now pause right there. These were 19th century farmers and builders, people who knew the difference between normal rock and something that looked constructed. Yet we're told later, oh, it just looks like a wall. Interesting. The explanation that came after. Here's the pattern that we see again and again and again and again. 1. Something strange is discovered. 2. People start asking questions. 3. An explanation arrives later. In this case, geologists state, oh, it's just natural limestones joining, cracks and fractures. It's a coincidence, nothing to see here. But here's the problem. Natural fractures don't normally form long, straight corridors, repeating right angles, brick-like segmentation. Yet, that's exactly what eyewitnesses described before anyone had a reason to sensationalize it. So ask yourself, was the explanation discovered, or was it a sign? The giant skull, something I think my dad would very much be interested in. Now let's talk about what really makes people uncomfortable. For generations, locals told the same story. During early excavation near the wall, a skull far larger than a normal skull was found. Not slightly bigger, noticeably bigger. And then it was removed. No display, no photos, no preserved records.
Mine now! Too easy! Catch me if you can!
So here's the real conspiracy question. If the skull never existed, why has the story survived for over a century? And if it did exist, who decided what we see and what we didn't see? Now this is where things get biblical. Genesis 6:4 says, there were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. The Bible didn't whisper this. It stated it plainly. Giants before the flood and after. Across cultures, civilizations tell the same story. Giants, great builders, massive stoneworks, knowledge lost to time, walls, structures, foundations. So let's connect the dots. If giants existed, which I believe they did, so did my father, would they leave behind large tools, large structures, and large remains? Like a wall, or maybe a skull? America's forgotten giants. Here's something most people don't know. In the 1800s, newspapers across America reported giant skeletons, massive skulls, and unusual burial mounds. Many of these articles later vanished from the mainstream discussion. Did certain discoveries create theological and historical problems that no one wanted to deal with? Because if Genesis 6 is literal, which my dad always said, take the Bible literally, then modern history isn't telling the full story. Why this matters? Think about this. A wall that looks built, a town named after it, early eyewitness testimony, a giant skull story that won't die, biblical texts describing giants, and explanations that arrive only after curiosity grows. That's not proof. That's a pattern. And truth doesn't usually vanish. It gets buried, reclassified, or laughed away. Maybe the mainstream says the wall is now all natural. Maybe the mainstream says the skull was misidentified. But we know some parts of history don't fit the narrative we're allowed to believe. Walls don't build themselves. Stories don't survive this long by accident. And Genesis 6 didn't end with a question mark. We added that part later. If you've heard of the Rockwall skull story, comment below. If your family knows something, speak up. Because buried truths have a way of resurfacing. And this wall, it's still there. In fact, Jake and I are going to visit it tomorrow.
So we're going on an adventure.
Yeah, we're going on an adventure. I said, Jake, what are you doing Thursday? He said, nothing. I said, well, we're going to Rockwall, Texas. It's only like 45 minutes away. So,
you guys are in Texas?
Yeah, I'm from Dallas, and that's where the TrutherCon is going to be, which I would love to have you guys on camera. If you guys want to come, we'd love to have you.
That would be cool. When is that happening?
November 7th and 8th.
That gives us plenty of time. Maybe we could figure that out.
I think we could do that.
Yeah, why not?
All right, sounds good. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, dude. We'll come.
I got some questions. Jeremiah, what do you think you guys are going to find at this rock wall? What are you going there? What are you looking for specifically?
Well, I know that they won't let anybody on the property that the actual rock wall is supposed to be, but there's a historical society that's only open Thursday through Saturday, and they do talk about the historical stuff, and they also talk about like the lore about it, apparently. And I heard, this is from a stupid History Channel show that tried to say it was nothing, but right outside the courthouse, apparently some of the rocks from the rock wall are there. And I think it's documented, but I could be wrong. We're just going in kind of blind, but we're going to try to find where that rock wall is. And if we do, that would be pretty epic. We have to sneak on some property. Oh, I didn't know.
You're going to have to hope that this episode airs after you guys sneak on the property. Don't let anybody know that you're going to do that, right? This is going to air till when?
Probably either Friday or next Friday.
Okay, good. So you'll already be Wednesday. Gone and back by then.
Yep. We'll have already either been in jail or got trespassed and shot.
Yeah, I think sometimes the hope is just going, and you might make a connection, meet somebody that locally has a family tie or something, and maybe we can get on some property with some shovels. And heck, if I'm out there digging up for some, wall boulders, I don't mind, because eventually, somebody might dig up another Nephilim skull, and it could be us. So, you just got to make the right connections.
There's another place in Texas called Aurora, and I filmed this, but it was before Roswell, and they buried an alien body in Aurora, Texas. And it's like, there's so much history behind it. I did a whole presentation on it because it was so interesting and weird. Look up Aurora. It's really interesting. It's buried in a Confederate cemetery. And I may or may not have accidentally drove in there, but I didn't know. I didn't say, please stop here, but... I probably should stop saying that, but apparently they gave it a Christian burial. Why would they do that? It's just so weird. Aliens and all this weird stuff happening in Texas, and it's all kind of in my area. So I made a trip out of it and filmed it.
That's interesting because we've had, I think, one of the previous popes say that if aliens or extraterrestrials do present themselves, that they'll give it they'll baptize them.
I think that was Pope Benedict.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, I baptize you. May this water wash away all that is alien to grace and make you anew.
Yeah, so
that's crazy.
They gave this thing a Christian burial. Do you know what it looked like, the structure of it? Was it a small one, a tall gray or white nord?
Well,
what is this?
It was pretty small. I mean, it was in 1880 something. I don't have my notes for it, but it was a small being, and there was wreckage. And so this is kind of, so I asked L.A. Marzulli, I texted him and I was like, hey dude, do you know anything about the Aurora incident? And he said, it's the most credible UFO story. One of the most credible ones, because they still had documentation about it.
Yeah.
And so
1897, its name is Ned. They named it Ned.
Yeah. They embrace it now. It's funny.
Huh. Although I do have an alternative theory, maybe I could pitch it your guys' way. I asked L.A. Marzulli, and he was like emphatic, no, this can't be the answer. But I'm like, they're finding all these tiny bodies, and they're saying these are possible alien, creatures or whatever. We know the Nazis are crazy. We know that they experimented with children, and there's a whole thing of, orphans and the whole Cabbage Patch Kid topic. Part of me wonders if some of these bodies that are being found are just the incinerated bodies of tiny children that they stuck in crazy technology, and we're like, hey buddy, here's a lollipop, go fly over there. And then the child crashed, and then they were like, oh, it's much less dark to call it an alien recovery, an alien body, than us experimenting with advanced technology using orphans as our guinea pigs.
Bye see you later.
I will say though that the well that they buried, so they chopped up the UFO and they put it in a well, and the guy who bought the property got the worst case of arthritis. You guys should look it up because it's pretty disturbing. Like his hands look like elephantitis after he buried this stuff. So it's apparently still in a well, and it has cement all over it, and they just are like, nope.
Yeah, that's one of those things where like the radiation from the thing, gives you cancer or something like that if you get too close to it.
Yeah,
right. I don't know. It could be children. I do think that, I've been going back and forth on the Greys in particular because we're kind of like at this cusp of UFO disclosure. And, I kind of kicked around this idea for a while, and I'm not bailing out on it, but entertaining the idea that these are like a biomechanical husk, right? That carries out really rudimentary physical tasks, maybe even something that like a spiritual entity could inhabit so that it could interface with the physical realm.
Well, this, as Jake was saying, though, it reminded me of that Annie Jacobson story where she's saying that there are some people that were saying that the Russian government might have used like autistic children or severely deformed children and put them in these craft.
Yeah, there you go.
As like a disguise for, small alien grays. But it's just to throw confusion in the mix. We had the argument with some people about, are these things physical? Are they spiritual? And I would say, yeah, I think they're everything, like all of the above.
Yeah. Hybrid chimeric creations.
Yeah. Are they of the government? I'm like, yeah, there's government influence in there as well. And then there's certainly Nephilim spiritual demonic influence in there as well.
Right.
And I think it's all mixed together to have us confused and arguing about the nature of these things, which is what we're doing right now. Like we're on the precipice of disclosure, and the important part is going to be when they do present themselves, because they will, or the government will present them to us. We have to understand how to approach them.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is what the discussion has been.
I think it's not just to confuse us in conversations, but it's like, Russia has a really great MK Ultra-esque program, just like America does. And I think that a huge angle of this alien abduction phenomenon, it is actually like a shield. I'm not saying that there's not room for like actual entities in the conversation, but I think it's a great thing to hide this kidnapping of individuals. You think about Operation Midnight Climax, right? You're taking Johns from whorehouses, you're dosing them with LSD, early foundational moments of MK Ultra. I think you can present people this deformed, whether it's a autistic kid with some deformities or some, biomechanical husk or any chimeric nightmare that you can concoct. Show an abductee that, and then kind of make it the backdrop of like a craft, which may or may not be reverse engineered technology. But one of the things that's pretty consistent throughout the abductee phenomenon is like military personnel and medical personnel and things of that nature. And it makes me wonder like how much of what's happening is clandestine operations for like an MK Ultra type project where, MK Ultra supposedly takes 10,000 kids from orphanages. And that's what they're willing to say. And that program stops in the 70s, so we could admit that. It's like it never stopped. It changed names. What nightmarish shit are they doing now to take people?
And another question is, why does it look exactly like satanic ritual abuse?
Yeah, over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When we see the things like the files that are coming out recently revealing what the inner circle of these billionaires are doing, this is just the party group that are eating babies and doing whatnot. We're very lightly tapping into what's likely buried under many, many administrations of secret societies and CIA and, all the intelligence agencies founded by Nazis originally, by the way. They inherited the occult aspect of a lot of their experimentation from the 1940s, where the Nazis were doing like really occult stuff. I mean, the whole religion of the SS was basically pseudo occult and, fueled by meth.
Yeah. Well, we talked to, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Dr. Jerry Marzinski, but he is a clinical psychologist. He's dealt with schizophrenics in the field, like, personally for 35 plus years. First, he's in like the medical setting where there's a lot of guardrails. You can't really engage with them in a way that's not sanctified by the medical community. And eventually he winds up in a prison setting where they don't care what you do to these people. And over time, Marzinski notices that these things, these hallucinations, audible hallucinations and visual hallucinations, seem to be adhering to a set of patterns, actually like 23 different patterns. And he goes, that's not how hallucinations act. They don't adhere to a wide spectrum of patterns, to the point where there's real predictability in their nature. And he comes out the other end saying that not only does he believe that demons, as the Bible describes it, is the most apt way to categorize these things because it seems like they're external to the patient. This is something that is oppressing an individual, and that the medical industry, when they say it's a chemical brain imbalance and all these other things, that's not the case whatsoever. He also lets slip, because he's in the prison, industry, and I guess it happens in the medical industry as well. Obviously, a lot of these people experience trauma. A lot of these people are drug users because of the trauma. Methamphetamine is the number one drug in his estimation that'll boot that door open, give these things access, and the door takes a long time to close. And so it happens much faster. If ever.
I think he described it almost as like a door stop. Yeah, that door is wide open to the spiritual realm or whatever you're communicating with.
Right. Have you guys ever heard of Tom O'Neill? Because he wrote Chaos. We had him on the show, and it's very similar to what you guys are saying. And I was like, man, that reminds me of Tom O'Neill. He kind of talked about the Charles Manson case, and I've always believed that Charles Manson was completely innocent because, they charged him with murder, but he didn't murder anybody.
Right.
And he's the most evil guy in the world, but, people refuse to, they won't take that back.
Well, that's like, when Albert Pike is famous for saying, like, when the people need a hero, we'll provide one for them. I think it also goes in the other direction. Like, when the people need a villain, a sufficient enough bad guy to cast the blames of all, that ails society upon, they're going to roll a guy
That's
out.
That's Epstein right now. But can you tell us a little more about O'Neill? Because I have seen the book, but I don't know his work as well.
Yeah, Tom O'Neill, the whole book is called Chaos, Charles Manson, the CIA, and the Secret History of the 60s. But it basically talks about not only Charles Manson, but about how MK Ultra was like a big thing. Jake is better at explaining what chaos is, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a dyslexic.
It's really interesting. He's kind of exposing the bias of the prosecutor in the Charles Manson case. And I kind of came away with it. I guess my analysis of the whole theory is that the prosecutor was setting a legal precedence to kind of set somebody up to take the fall whenever they had a conspiracy to murder through influence. And so it was right around the days when the 60s musical revolution was happening. The people were revolting against the government, and they were using music as that voice. And so what the government did is they take a figure like Manson, who's musically inclined, very prophetic kind of in his songwriting. He even influenced the Beach Boys. And they take him and they make him allegedly responsible for influencing the Tate murders. And what's interesting is they set a legal precedence for coming after musical leaders that are like, that's part of my kind of.
His music is actually pretty good.
I've heard
his music is awesome.
This is all like Laurel Canyon adjacent, right?
Yeah, I was just looking that up. Same thing.
Charles Manson was very deep into the Laurel Canyon stuff, and apparently he knew like Jim Morrison and like all these people. But the Beach Boys are the ones that it's Dennis Wilson, who was the drummer in one of the Wilson brothers. I'm autistic about this, sorry. But he convinced Dennis Wilson to let him and his groupies, his members, move into the house. And so that's how they kind of wiggled their way in. And then he convinced Dennis to record some music. And then they messed him over. And Dennis Wilson recorded one of Charlie's songs.
My life is yours, and you can have my word. I'm your kind, and I see.
And that's actually why I named my cat Charlie. I know that's dark, but because he's a little killer, but he's not a killer. He's innocent. But the prosecutor, Vincent Bugliosi, wrote the #1 true crime book of all time, and it's called Helter Skelter. And everybody's heard of Helter Skelter. Tell me that's not a conflict of interest. I mean, the lead prosecutor makes the best-selling true crime book of all time. And I mean, he's dead now, but there's a cool story about Tom O'Neill and how he was like, he got an answer out of him, but then like he just stayed on him. And I don't know, my wife is into the book, so she's telling me more about it, because I'm dyslexic and it's hard for me to read books, especially.
It's so crazy. Dude, you're the same person.
I don't read. I do not read.
I don't think he can read.
I don't think I've ever read a book.
I'm writing a book right now.
Crazy.
And I
hey, me too.
Read books.
I can't do this right now, guys.
I've read 2 books in my life. I've read
I just wrote my Charlie book, my second edition of my Charlie book, and this is the only one I can read because it's like children.
Oh my God. I've read 2 books in my life. One of them was Whitley Strieber's Communion, and then the other one was I Am Legend. And then after that, I was like, I think I've read all I need to read. And that was it for the rest of my life. When is Manson? What year is that happening?
So in the 60s.
That was in the
60s. That's right.
Yeah, 1966. I think I could be wrong on that.
It's just one of those things where, like, you know, everything has an operation tied to it, and it's brought me to the conclusion that like all culture in general, and it goes beyond culture, but culture specifically is I don't know what it's gonna call it, like it's evil,
fabricated almost.
Yeah, and in that way, it's predatory in its nature, and it's aimed at, you know, Western culture. It's aimed at American it's aimed at regular people, and it's constructed by intelligence agencies, and it's executed by these selected, you know, individuals, whether it's a Jim Morrison or a Charles Manson. And in that way, I would agree with you, Jeremiah. Like, yeah, he is innocent. This is a guy that was likely subjected to these LSD experimentations.
I tried to stop Nixon, and I stopped him dead in his tracks. I tried to stop the Vietnam War, and I did it. And I was convicted for being the father of this country. And all the things I did without breaking the law. Maybe I haven't done enough. I might be ashamed of that, for not doing enough.
As you get a lot of mail from people who want to follow you still.
Follow me? Did you have any choice? You'll all follow me. I don't. You know, you got these people over here that want to live. You want to live? Get in line, we'll live. You don't want to live? Hurry up. You know, the gate's open. You know, do your thing, man. Here, give them some Coke. All Charlie's friends get free Coke. Give them responsibility for the children that they said that I influenced. You know, you want to drop the blame on Charlie and say it's all Charlie's fault.
What did you do?
I do the best thing I know how. Nothing. I play music and I smoke a little grass now and then because it helps me and I like to relax with it. That's about it. Why don't you blame the little babies?
Mr. Emmons, this is a very...
I gotta take a shit. Would you excuse me? Hey, you don't mind if I'm directing to the point, do you?
Not at all.
It don't take me to tell you that you're about 10 pounds overweight, does it?
Thanks.
But I can be honest with you, Ken. Drugs, LSD, I don't consider a drug. I don't consider peyote a drug. Those are more or less religiously significant awareness, mind-expanding apparatuses that come from the intelligence of the universe. The reason that the girls liked me was, hey now, I'm all around you, Hey now, up on your heart I can sing through you. And I play and I sing, and they say, hey man, you got soul in that music. And I said, yeah, I play a little bit, you know. I like it. And they said, man, you're really somebody. I said, oh, I am? Oh, I just got out of jail. I don't know what somebody is. They like my music. They say, man, we want to get you over. I said, get me over for what? They said, we take you down here to Beverly Hills and we want to get you in because you're a star. I said, I'm a what? They said, you're a star. So they took me to the Beach Boys. Brain, I did not break the law. Jesus Christ told you that 2,000 years ago. You don't understand me. That's your trouble. Not my fault because you don't understand me. I don't understand you either. But I don't spend my whole life trying to put the blame over on you because my cigarette didn't light or because something didn't work right. What do you want to call me a murderer for? I've never killed anyone. I don't need to kill anyone. I think it. I have it here. I don't need to live in this physical realm. I walk around in the physical realm, and I put on the faces, and I talk, and I play, and it's this big act, man. In the spiritual world is where I live. I exist in places you never even dreamed of. I'm just another guy walking down the road going, how many times I got to go through where's God at? See, I've got a face like what is it? I'm an old man. All I want to do is retire. Get on the desert and be left alone. I don't want to bother nobody. I'm hiding out underneath the rock. They come in and say, hey, Charlie, hi. I said, what do you want? You want to talk? I said, about what? We have problems.
People look at you today, 20 years later, and they still have no idea what you're about. Tell me in a sentence who you are.
Nobody. I'm nobody. I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine. And a straight racer if you get too close to me.
And then he's like released out in the public, and then he gets jailed, and then he gets immediately out of jail and released back out in the public over and over again. Like, that's their boogeyman. It's very much the same thing. Oh, this is fascinating. What's that say?
Yeah. So I wanted to bring this up just because we're on this topic. This is the recently declassified intelligence agency document that talks about the chemicals, including drugs. And it says, it is believed that specific research should be undertaken to develop new chemicals for drugs or to improve known elements for use in the artichoke work. A study should be made to determine what drugs are best suited for direct use on subjects along the lines of amytal and pentothal, which drugs are best for indirect or long-range approach to subjects. The second type of drug should be one that could be administered over a considerable period of time, possibly being placed in food or water, and should either have an agitating effect, producing anxiety, nervousness, tension, or a depressing effect, creating a feeling of despondency, helplessness, lethargy. This study should include chemicals or drugs that can effectively be concealed in common items such as food, water, Coca-Cola, beer, liquor, cigarettes, etc. This type of drug should also be capable of use in standard medical treatments such as shots, etc.
Man,
oh my gosh.
Okay. Well, let's go back to finish up what you were talking about with
this MK Ultra.
No, you were talking about Marzinski's work.
Oh yeah.
You were getting at methamphetamine being one of these drugs that will make you the most susceptible to hearing entities. And anyone who's done methamphetamine, not me, but Matt, they're tripping, you're hearing voices, and these voices are not just voices, they're accurate. They'll tell you where to go to dig up some gold for your next,
go find your drug dealer's stash, all types of shit.
Stash, many such cases of these stories. And then you go back to the 1940s and you see what Nazi Germany was taking during the time. And they were
Pervitin.
Yeah, it was called berserkers though.
Oh, no, that was the...
no, their soldiers were called berserkers when they were on Pervitin.
Yeah, it's the same exact thing from the Norse mythology when they're worshiping berserker spirits. And
you see him at the Olympics and he's just tweaking,
and he's all like rocking.
He's on Pervitin.
He's getting it.
And Pervitin is the same chemical compound as methamphetamine. So then you go a little bit further and you look at the technology that they were into. It's like, this he's obsessed with ancient artifacts. He's into all this occult knowledge. I mean,
the Nazi bell.
How he gets into how he gets into power is not just into power, but how he is motivated to move toward this power. He called this voice Providence.
Yeah,
he's in the bunker.
This comes from his sister. His sister wrote a tell-all book, and she's saying the craziest shit in the world.
Yeah, he's in a bunker.
Who, this guy?
That dude right there, our guy,
fine gentleman,
Uncle H. He's next to some men and he hears a voice and it tells him to move to the other side of the bunker during World War I. He does. Bomb comes in, boom, kills those guys, and he attributes that to Providence. And then he even goes on to say during his administration, he goes, I don't move unless Providence tells me to move.
Yeah.
So this this voice, whatever this is, this feeling, this spirit, he's guided by that, which is very interesting.
I think there's some insight into the nature of that. If you subscribe to the Heiser worldview, which I think there's some real veracity to that, this idea that like these pantheon members, all these different mythoses weren't just symbolic, but these are actual entities. I think they were entities. You can track sort of the Baal Hadad of ancient Sumeria all the way up to the Zeus of Greek mythology. And if you look at Hitler, not only is he sporting all of the symbolism of Zeus with the lightning bolts and with the eagle and all this other shit.
I want to just take a quick break really quick to say he did have some good points.
And also dressed really well.
Yes.
He dressed like his ass. He dressed.
He made good points.
He made some good points. That boy dressed. Okay. But besides that, and I'm sure the Pervitin was really great. He was giving speeches from the altar of Zeus. So in the Bible, it talks about the seat of Satan being in, or the throne of Satan being in Pergamum. Pergamum is modern day Turkey. In Turkey is where they found the altar of Zeus. They brought this thing to the Berlin Museum. And then when Hitler commissions, I don't know, some German dude to design his fairgrounds where he would be giving his speeches from, it was the Zeppelin Tribune grounds. The guy took inspiration from the altar of Zeus that was at the Berlin Museum. The rumor is that he actually took stones from it as well. I don't know if that's true, but you got a guy who's standing on what is effectively a recreation of the Temple of Zeus, and he is dressed up where he's got eagles and lightning bolts on his body.
Drip.
He's listening to a voice as he's on meth, and the voice is Providence. And, so when people go like, oh, Hitler was Christian or Catholic, or he had empathy for Catholicism, that's why you see him integrating with the church and doing this and that. I'm like, I think that dude was talking to Zeus, which is the same entity as Baal Hadad, which is more than likely a fallen angel.
Right on.
Yeah, he really loved that altar of Pergamos. Him and Barack Hussein Obama got inaugurated in front of a recreation of that altar.
Yeah, he's right here on my wall.
So I wanted to tap on something with what you're.
My bad.
So meth, right? So meth is this the excellent drug of choice for the demons to get into people's brains, right?
Yeah.
But it brought to mind when you guys brought that up. Have you guys ever seen Cabin in the Woods? The film Cabin in the Woods.
Great movie.
Man, in that film, the people were being drugged by this secret society living underneath them. And the one guy who wasn't kind of influenced was the guy who was token up, smoking some cannabis, and that messed with their drug of choice to try to control them.
They fear this man. They know he sees farther than they, and he will bind them with ancient logics. Chips in our kids' heads so they won't get lost. Society needs to crumble. We're all just too chicken to let it. 5, Mr. Rand. You will come to see things my way. Drunk. Jewels too. Well, then maybe it's something else. What? You're not seeing what you don't want to see. Puppeteers.
When you brought up the, meth as this demonic door opening thing, it was like, oh, I wonder if cannabis is like the far other side of the spectrum. It like screws up their ability to
because
do this or that.
I stopped smoking because I was having like, I have a long history of seeing shit. I don't know how else to put it. Things, this the whole shadow people thing and all that other crap. It was reaching a real apex a few years ago, and I found that it stopped when I stopped smoking. Interestingly enough, from like 16 to, 33, 34, I was smoking weed all those years. And that's also when I started my conspiracy journey, was at 16. It does have a way of, I know there's like something that's paranoia inducing about marijuana, but it's also like hyper analytical. And it was like, while I was smoking, I was looking around going, that doesn't make any sense. Why is that like that? You know what I mean? Like over and over again, to the point of,
it was a great tool for comedy too. Like I was using it up until like a year and a half ago, and I stopped as well for different reasons, because I was doing a comedy show, and we're doing like, we're touching on everything, and we're making crude jokes. And we had read, I was doing this show as well, Nephilim Desk, where we read a listener submission email, and the guy said something like he had struggled with drugs for a long time, and then he stopped, and he was completely sober, but he was like really bad with the drug use. And then he said, but on Wednesday nights at 9/11, which is when we recorded our comedy show, he would go, he'd take an edible. Yeah, exactly. It was called Tower Gang. Rest in peace, Tower Gang. He would take an edible, or he would get high. And I'm like, that's interesting, because I don't know what the other guys were doing, but I was smoking for sure. I know one of the guys was drinking, maybe somebody was doing mushrooms, but it's all virtual stuff. And then I started to think, I'm like, is my my interaction with this guy through the screen, getting him to go back into that, to do, to smoke or whatever he's doing. And I think I was like, damn, like I didn't want that. I didn't want to do that. I was doing that for me to be creative and funny. So I just decided right there, I was like, I'm going to stop. I don't want to because for me, it was fine. I didn't have anything wrong. And I actually kind of prefer it. Sometimes it's like, you can think more freely or grab that abstract idea that's floating out that you wouldn't otherwise have seen. But if there's a dude out there that's listening to my words and I'm influencing in that way, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to not do that. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's like a way out, but
there is something though.
I just stopped.
I think these things all serve as like a tool, depends on what you're trying to do. And, I came across a video a couple of days ago and it was a guy talking about how 2% of the population has this, he called it a disorder. I don't think it's a disorder, but this idea that when you close your eyes, you see like static. And I have that. But when I'm smoking, I can see, okay, this is weird because
who said me too?
Of course.
Me.
Okay. So there might be somebody in the audience who's going to hear this. When I see static, I never described it as static. I described it as stars. It looks like stars. It looks like you're moving through outer space. I don't know what to do with it. I can't do anything with it. It feels very much like a 3-dimensional space. And it's just endlessly wheeling through stars. And I'm not always there. I can close my eyes and have a good night's sleep or whatever, but I can get there. After I saw that video and that guy said that 2% of people had access to that and he called it a disorder.
Did you know that 13% of the people have 50% of the violent crime?
And extra bone in their neck, I think it was. So I found...
We're doing statistics.
I was like, hey, that's interesting. I haven't been there in a long time. Let me try. And I know what the process is like. So I shut my eyes and I'm trying to get there. I can't get there as easily. Like I can kind of see it. It's there. And then I was like, I haven't been there since I stopped smoking weed. And so there's something about shutting down, I don't know, some part of the brain that is responsible for a lot of hesitation and a lot of pause, where if you're in this state of mind, maybe it's a flow state or something like that, or something akin to it. I don't have all the hangups that would stop me from getting to this thing.
Yeah.
Now I do. Now in my sobriety, I'm like, I can't access this thing. I can get close, but it's almost like, when exhausting and it takes so long.
It's like it's a major setback.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we wear the sunglasses, right?
I wear the sunglasses because I have a giant zip between my eyebrows.
That's why it all covered up. Hey, I heard once that I might be incorrect on this. So if some medical student out there can correct me, but somebody told me that the cannabinoid receptors that we have in our bodies are actually behind our eyes. And that's why when people smoke weed, they see. Maybe just a little redirect here. I have this clip here that I think you guys will enjoy. It's a audio dramatization of the subject of Nephilim in Genesis 6 and the book of Enoch. And so we wanted to play that clip and kind of get back into some of your Nephilim research and your thoughts kind of in terms of the ancient and esoteric and how these things are possibly walking among us today. So if you guys wouldn't mind, check this out.
6. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of the heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another,
Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children.
And Semyaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered him and said,
Let us all swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing.
Then sware they all together, and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it. And they were in all 200, who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called it Mount Hermon, because they had sworn and bound themselves by mutual imprecations upon it.
So just to kind of set us up for the conversation here, the Book of Enoch is one of the only texts that actually gives an origin account on what demons actually are. So the Book of Enoch is the one that points out that demons are the disembodied spirits of these Nephilim creatures that were never meant to exist. And it ties into kind of what we're talking about with the modern alien disclosure topic. And what are these beings that are inhabiting these flesh suits? What do you guys think?
So an interesting thing to point out right off the bat is that Nephilim, we look at that terminology and we think giants. And I think that's fair. There's obviously huge evidence that supports that. But I've come to a place where it's much more synonymous in my mind. I'm not saying definition wise, in my mind, with hybridization. You think about like a liger, for example, right? Like when you crossbreed these two things, a lion and a tiger, one of the things that it does is it deregulates the growth hormone, which I believe, I forget the name that's associated with that, but it results in gigantism.
It's called
gibberellum.
Gibberellum.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
which is actually the prefix for like when you see Nimrod in the Bible, Nimrod became Gibbor.
Yeah,
he became Gibbor. So gibberellum is it's a chemical compound that you could actually find in Miracle Grow. Yeah, in Miracle Grow. And when you spray it on, it basically
deregulates that growth hormone.
Yeah, it deregulates the growth hormone of the plant you put it on so it can grow to larger sizes. But in the Book of Enoch, it talks about that they taught them the cutting of roots. This is all information that we've heard from Sean from Kingdom in Context, he's an excellent researcher. If you haven't spoken to him, check him out. But
go way back with him. Yeah.
Okay. He's awesome. Love that dude.
So yeah, I think I got verse 7 or chapter 7 in the Book of Enoch. It says that they taught them all manner of things, and then it says they taught them the cutting of roots, and then they took them as wives, and they bore them children. But the cutting of roots is interesting because it does pertain to that gibberellum aspect of they were genetically manipulating human babies or maybe the mothers to grow these huge offspring, and they were successful with it.
Yeah, and I think that I don't know what. Let's say we could name instead of Nephilim. The method by which those things came into creation, I would say like that is almost more important. Let's just say like that was genetic manipulation. We see that in a multitude of ways, and it's present directly in this modern day alien phenomenon. So, the hybridization program, actually, I think is probably a better way to describe it. You have that within the phenomenon of the black-eyed children. So abductees, women will become impregnated mysteriously. In many cases, like in the case of Karen Wilkinson, who works with L.A. Marzulli, she goes and has this pregnancy confirmed. Later on, the pregnancy mysteriously vanishes. And, she goes to the doctor, and the doctor is taken aback, doesn't know how to quantify this. You actually, not only do you not have the baby, you have no signs of prior pregnancy, which is unheard of. Later on in life, Karen would be abducted again and introduced to these children, and they would be weird. There's just something wrong. And I believe she even said that she got the impression that the Greys and whatever other entities were there wanted her to interface with these kids because there was something wrong, and the Greys couldn't quantify it either. And they thought maybe it was the missing element of the mother that wasn't present that caused these children to be, maybe in a dissociative state. But I think that hybridization program being in both of those elements is not an accident. And as we move towards disclosure, this big conversation is happening. Are they demons? Are they demonic? Half the crowd screams no. The other half screams yes. Yeah. I think demonic is a better terminology to use here because demons, as you said, disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. I'm not saying that you couldn't potentially have that scenario where a disembodied spirit is then present within a biological, a biomechanism, right? Like a gray, if it's not really totally biological, it is part mechanical. Could it be inhabited by a spirit? Possibly. But I think demonic is a much better terminology to slap on these things because I do think they're inherently against man and against God, and they are inherently deceptive. And so I think that what we have here is a rebranding. What was once giants, demigods, men of renown, heroes of old, and then maybe even if you take the Heiser worldview, chimeric creations like an Anubis with a body of a man, head of a dog, if that was truly a thing, or like a Minotaur. Let's say a Minotaur maybe is among those angels that fell is a cherubim, and a cherubim has the face of an oxen, the face of a man, the face of a lion, and the face of an eagle. Well, could it then bear an offspring that has the face of an oxen? And would that thing maybe guard a labyrinth? I don't know. But you get what I'm getting at, right? So you might actually have an explanation for a multitude of these chimeric creations. And maybe over time, since there's such variety within the things that you can create in this hybridization program, you could eventually get to the point where you rebrand, right? So you have like Lamb being the first visit of an alien gray that Aleister Crowley channels and communicates with. And Crowley is attributed to saying, today we call them angels and demons. Tomorrow we'll call them something else. I think that rebranding started to take root around that time. And that over an extended period of time, let's say like since like 47, it seems like all things start there out of the Nazi program. I think they were communicating with them. We get a Nazi pioneered space program in NASA. We get the propaganda machine in Hollywood. And these things work tirelessly for generations to get us comfortable with the new way they're going to present themselves, which is, the modern day alien visage. So are they demons, strictly speaking? I don't know. Almost seems like a throwaway part of the conversation. Are they demonic? Yeah. Hell yeah.
Yeah. The fascination with creating a moon child that the occult and the Nazis, the Jack Parsons had with the Babylon working rituals and such. It really reminds me what's coming out about what was done over in Zorro Ranch with Epstein and such. Where they're trying to create these particular blend of human. I mean, it's literally the whole master race thing from the Nazi Germany era. And I guess it just rolled over. And it's like they're trying to create these children or these beings that manifest a type of spirit that is not normal, that is something else. And whether it's just a naturally, creating the environment for these very specific, peculiar spirits to manifest in the world, or it's creating a vessel for other spirits to inhabit, or perhaps it's just the focus on creating somebody that's good at being turned off so that they can just be controlled really easily. Yeah, I mean, it's probably a mix of all of them. And I think when disclosure comes, that's the biggest question is, can people, put the suspension of disbelief and recognize that there is a truth to, some of these things, but that they're going to use what they reveal to manipulate us. And it's probably not going to be the full disclosure of the reality of things. It's going to be how they want us to view it. And I mean, what do you guys think about like how do we tell the difference between true disclosure versus, fabricated great deception stuff?
That's a hard one. I mean, the Bible tells us to test the spirits. I often wonder, what if you have something that is not all spirit and is more of a physical thing, like some sort of chimeric creation? How aptly could you test that? I think a good question to ask yourself is we get that all the time. We like to say aliens are demons because it pisses people off and then it draws them into the conversation. They go, no, that's not true. There's a multitude of entities that inhabit the universe. And we go, okay, good. Now you're here. Let's talk about it. But do you think that the government is going to disclose, if you want to call them Elohim, let's say that was the only thing we were dealing with, is these entities that inhabit the spiritual realm, Elohim that are still in the grace of God? Like, do you think that the government is going to disclose the will of the Lord? Or is the government going to disclose some deception? And it's like, well, just look at the track record.
Do you think the government is capable of disclosing what God is doing?
Right.
Is it really, I guess that's the question.
That's a
you can't put your faith in government.
Yeah.
Exactly. We're having this discussion right now in a really big way.
This is where we butt heads with, I mean, the people that we're butting heads with about this, the ones that don't want us in the polite society,
they're calling for our cancellation,
Christian communities they've built, they all have that one thing in common, and it does kind of like extrapolate down to Israel as well in some cases, but they all have this like trust the government narrative where they go along party lines and they're like, no, it's like one side, right hand path, left hand path, and when even on our debate show with one of these people, they go, well, if you had to choose between the people who are withholding disclosure and the people who are they're going to disclose and they're going to make the bad guys pay.
Which one are you going to choose?
And I'm like, like none of these are actual solutions. None of these are actual answers. This is the same thing being handed to you. Like if you don't understand this after 2020, I don't really know what to tell you anymore.
Yeah. And I think it's worth saying too. So, I mean, obviously within, the experiences, there's a lot of overlap, right? We talked about the hybridization program, and that being present within the Nephilim thing. But there's also another element that is, it should be glowing and it should be the center point around which all speculative argumentation takes place. And that center point is the fact that any of these alien abductions stop when calling on the name of Jesus Christ.
Not everyone.
Not everyone.
It's probably something like 30%.
I would say it's probably more than that. I mean, and there's precedent within the Bible, right? Seven sons of Skiba try to cast out demons in the name of Jesus, and he goes, it's the same Jesus that Paul, and he's like, the demon's like, I know Paul and I know Jesus, I don't know you, so there's precedent for that right there. And then you have Jesus himself saying that some of these spirits or demons come out through fasting and through prayer. So it seems like there's a little bit more nuance.
And you also have what we were talking about, these actual physical entities, maybe like small autistic children that are deployed by the government. I don't know. Maybe just government assets.
Can you cast out a small autistic child in the name of Christ?
If someone's like robbing you and you go in Jesus' name, they're going to probably still stab you and take your stuff because that's like operation in the physical realm. The rules in the spiritual realm are different. They operate on consent, on pure consent.
Yeah.
Which is why we're always being propositioned by something. But go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that right there is like everything needs to stop, and we need to be massively considering the demonic nature of these entities, if any of them, are able to be cast out or an abduction experience stops when you call upon Jesus Christ. That's huge. But I think that looking at these sort of new age practitioners, which I don't take them as an authority or anything, I just look at their information, I go, that's fascinating. These thought leaders within occult and new age practices, we already talked about Aleister Crowley channeling these entities. I think that mostly what you have is people in the past channeling them, and they're channeling them through, drug use, ritual, meditation, et cetera. Eventually, and I think it's where we are right now, the way that they channel them is through technology, right? Frequency-based technology. I think that these things exist within a realm that we can detect as a frequency, a wavelength.
One of our favorite people, Indrija Puharich.
Oh yeah.
He was operating in the 50s as well, right around 47 probably. 48 to 50 is really when he's doing his work. He's the guy that develops this like hard physical technology of the dental tooth implant, and they're using this technology. And they rolled it out kind of secretly, but they were using this as like a voice to skull mechanism, a voice of God mechanism. So if you have this dental tooth implant in your head, they can then pick up on the frequency, send it to you, and talk to you directly, which people will attribute to schizophrenia or voices in my head or the government's telling me.
Okay, I swear to f***ing God, somebody is talking. I'm pretty sure someone is. I'm gonna go for a walk. No! What are you saying? Huh? What do you want? You think I'm a puppet, huh? You think I'm a puppet, gonna do a little f***ing puppet dance? I'm the boss of my own brain, so give it up. I'm gonna go for a walk.
You've heard it 1,000 times.
Abductees get pieces of metal implanted in them all the time, and they're mysterious. They don't know why. There's this like famous story of Lucille Ball back in the day where she goes for a routine dental procedure, and then she gets out and she starts hearing music in her head as she's driving. Like a couple of days later, she brings it up to somebody, and they go, "Did you have a dental procedure recently?" She goes, "Yeah, I did, dude." He goes, "Yeah, there's something in the filling. It's conducting frequency." And then she actually goes on to thwart a Japanese insurgency in California because they're communicating with one another, ham radio, whatever it is. She picks it up in her head, and they're able to actually stop this insurgency. So the nerves in the teeth are the closest ones to the brain. There's only one step closer to the brain, and that is the brain. You have to get past either the blood-brain barrier or the skull. I mean, maybe we can get into that a little bit later on, but as far as these new age thought leaders, besides Crowley, you have Rudolf Steiner. I was taking notes in preparation for a debate. We never got around to any of this fascinating stuff, but Austrian philosopher, lecturer, and he has a lecture series called The Fall of the Spirits of Darkness. And this is interesting because Rudolf Steiner's kind of a wonky guy. He believed that in 1870, the Archangel Michael won a great victory over basically like demonic spirits and cast them down to earth. They would then be fallen. So, do with that what you will, but he still claimed that those spirits were cast down into the human realm and that they would later be redefined as enlightening, progressive, and scientific rather than demons. He actually says demons rather than demons. And he goes, eventually mankind would be entirely deceived by these entities. And he looked at our current era. All these people are looking at our current era. Baba Vanga predicts 2026 is going to be aliens. Alice Bailey has a fascinating prediction about 2026 as well. We'll get to that later on. But our current era would be when the deception would be fully accepted. And what's fascinating about that within the nuance is fully accepted insinuates that it's a long arc until we get to fully accepted. I would say that long arc is 1947, birth of the CIA, Operation Paperclip, the creation of NASA, the creation of the propaganda machine that's Hollywood. Hollywood exists, since 1911. They make a fascinating Gates of Ishtar construction, 1914, I believe it is. And it still stands there to this day. So they create this gigantic
triumphal arches. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's literally the Gates of Ishtar, is it not? And it's meant to, if you think about gates and all their implications as far as portals and such, are we ushering into Hollywood the spirit of Ishtar? Which I think, even that is on the table for discussion too. This divine feminine goddess, Hathor, all this crap. But anywho, I think it's a long curve, Hollywood being a huge mechanism behind it, because alien means foreign, right? Mm-hmm. In its definition. But that's not what people think when you say alien. When you say alien, people think UFOs, little green dudes, big heads, giant eyes, like all that shit. That word, in my opinion, is a psyop. There's no aliens. All right. I think that the Bible did a great job. Devils, demons, unclean spirits, fallen angels, Nephilim. And then you have, within it, seraphim and cherubim and thrones and powers and principalities and all these things. There's a huge expanse of categorization. This new terminology, alien, people rest on it because it means foreign. And that's what these things would be. Foreign to our physical realm if they're from another dimension. Foreign to our planet if they're from outer space, which, is probably fake and gay. But that's not what it means, dude. It's culturally, it's loaded. It means something totally outside of foreign. If it didn't, you would say that every person who comes in your house who isn't native to your home is alien. But we don't say that. We're talking about dudes in crafts from space.
Yeah. Yep. That's right on. When you mentioned the tooth thing, I wanted to go back to that. Have you ever tried on meta glasses? Because you can legit hear it from your skull. They're the weirdest thing. And so maybe that's proof that Zuck is a alien.
Well, I mean, that's what we get, right? So they say like the fiber optics technology came from the recovered craft operations, and so did the touchscreen technology. And then what do we get it as? We get it as like a dope TV.
Or like bone conducting headphones. Yeah. That's what it is. But in essence, everything is kind of frequency and vibration. That's like it's like a Tesla idea, but I think there's a lot more truth to that than people want to actually look at. But if you want to go back to that idea of what Puharich is doing in this vibrational technology, because it does pertains to how we're operating in society today, and also that interesting CIA article Jake brought up just before.
It's so over the target, it's insane.
Yeah, but you have to look at his full scope of work and what he's doing. He's a fascinating guy. He's like a Professor X of the CIA. He's all over the place. He's going to different countries, and anytime there's like a supernatural occurrence, this guy seems to show up.
Yeah, within the field of like psionics and psychic abilities or some shit.
He shows up one time. A guy in Brazil is doing miraculous surgeries. His name is Dr. Arrigo, and he's healing people, but he's a taxi driver, and he's just like cutting people's.
I think he's like an illiterate taxi driver in Brazil. Yeah,
he's cutting your cancers out with a rusty knife. They called him the doctor of the rusty knife, and in that story, as we're listening to it, like, oh yeah, Andrija Puharich shows up.
Yeah, but how is he doing it though? That dude he's
doing it by channeling an old dead German doctor.
Oh my god,
this is what he says. Yeah.
Wow.
It's crazy.
But he's having success. Like the dude's success ratio was insane. I don't know if it was like 100% or in the high 90s, but he's cutting cancerous tumors out of people. He's an illiterate taxi cab driver who says, there's a dead German dude in my brain. It just tells me how to do it.
And of course, Puharich is there. He goes, interesting. And then he's back in America doing whatever he's doing.
Yeah.
One of the main things that he was doing is he channels an entity called the Nine. It calls itself the Nine. And
the
then
999.
Not that nine.
Not
That's
that
right.
nine. Not that nine.
It goes on to like tell that it's actually like the Egyptian gods of the Ennead. So these 9 gods. And then you look at throughout antiquity, you have like all of the mythologies have these same 9 gods and they rhyme and the characteristics repeat of each of themselves. So
they are no gods.
Yes.
Well, I mean, they fancy themselves gods, but lowercase g.
They are 9 gods. 9.
Yeah.
999.
This guy's doing that kind of work. And it's interesting because we see that work then moved on into like more of a modern day iteration. And he comes up in the telepathy tapes. You guys are aware of that?
I've heard a little bit about it, but I'd love to hear more.
Oh, they're fascinating, dude. They're fascinating.
Oh,
the telepathy tapes are, it's a series of podcasts about nonverbal autistic children. And these autistic children are communicating through telepathy. I mean, close personal acquaintances and also with each other.
Yeah.
And they have this like other ability to kind of astral project, and they meet on a place called the Hill. It's crazy. It's been documented by multiple people.
This is research that goes on
funded
for a while too, though. There's Rupert Sheldrake does a great job of categorizing this stuff where it's like between close loved ones and even like people and their pets, there seems to be some tangible, predictable psychic phenomenon.
Yeah, they'll communicate. Like the dog will know when the owner is coming home, even if the owner changes up the time frame. But about 15 minutes before, you'll see the dog get excited. That's like Rupert Sheldrake's work. That's also covered and briefly touched on in the telepathy tapes. But
they talk about Sheldrake in the telepathy tapes?
Yeah,
that's funny. The other thing is when you're thinking of a song and then your spouse starts singing it, like that kind of a deal.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
right.
That's it. That happens. The closer you get, the more that sort of a thing happens.
So, but this is
it's the frequency stuff. With frequency and vibration. I think AI has allowed our modern iteration of these occult, secret societies to unlock, like really fine tune how they're utilizing frequencies. And there's all the stuff coming out about Wi-Fi routers being able to see you through, walls and stuff. I mean, if they're tapping into this stuff and they can send a particular frequency and trigger like things in your body or the frequency that pisses the parasite in your brain off, it's basically that Kingsman movie where they're carrying cell phones around and then boom, everybody goes bonkers.
Yeah. Great
but yeah,
scene,
please
by the
continue.
way.
Yeah, all that work, all that stuff that we'll see in current media, that's brought on by this guy's work, this guy Puharich, because he was obsessed with telepathy. That's
it
what he
sounds
was
like Stranger Things.
It is. It's the exact same. So like
the Montauk Project, MK Ultra, Project Artichoke, that stuff is birthed out of the work that he's doing. Obviously, I think his work is birthed out of stuff that was happening in Nazi Germany, and then you can go back throughout antiquity and track it. But
he was also looking more at the technological aspect, implants and such. There's a whole other field that you would get from Himmler, which is the trauma-based disassociative aspect. So if you combine those two things, you can create a state of dissociation in an individual by traumatizing them. That gives way to like psychic abilities and the ability to communicate with entities. It also creates a secondary programmable personality that emerges. So that's your patsy kind of a deal, or your shooter, Manchurian candidate, sort of an idea. I think what happened is they saw a real viable way forward, blending those elements, the frequency conducting based, sort of research and the trauma based research.
And we've been talking about this for probably like a year and a half or so. And nobody cares. Ian Carroll covers the telepathy tapes, but misses the point.
Misses everything, dude.
Hey man, you guys are always welcome here to say whatever you want. You remind me, or the who you're describing reminds me of Dr. Jolly West, and he worked for a 3-letter agency, and he was connected with Manson and with Jack Ruby. which is crazy. I mean, the two most crazy things keep popping up in history. And it's like, how do these guys do this? Like,
we're being subjected to the fruits of all of these sorts of programs, the technological aspect, the frequency aspect, the trauma-based aspect, the channeling, the LSD experimentation, like all of that. They've figured out. I think the name of the game is always, how do you do this at scale? Mm-hmm. So on our show, Nephilim Death Squad, we like to call basically everybody free range MK Ultra chickens, because what's effectively happened is what they could reproduce in a lab. Let's say, for example, you would have the Clockwork Orange situation where you've got the guy's eyelids stretched open and you're subjecting him to traumatic media in order to have him disassociate, become numb to it all, yada, yada, and then become, a Manchurian candidate.
Can't do that. That's just one guy at a time.
Yeah, well,
the electricity bill, think of it.
It would be unbelievable. But you could at least learn from that one guy. You could go, oh, this works. Now we're being traumatized regularly, right?
Well, then they go, oh, well, what if we put the tooth implants, right?
Well, so with the tooth implants, it's just a basic...
Too slow.
Yeah, it's too slow. It's also like you can kind of implement it at scale until eventually they figure out like you're putting heavy metals in the tooth fillings, and then the FDA or whatever goes like, you can't do that anymore. People don't want that. But it worked, right? So what was originally happening in a lab, you want to implement at scale. The dentist office is a pretty good way because everybody goes and gets routine dental, not surgeries, but, fillings and things like that. Once they take the heavy metals out of the fillings, you now have to figure out how to reintroduce this. The teeth are good.
Well, he also had another patent, which is fucking crazy.
Which one was that?
ELF waves, extremely low frequency waves.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we're seeing this iteration with like the discombobulator. Using this. Yeah, this is like, the heart attack gun. Like they pointed at somebody and then they could really affect them.
Or you pointed at the sky and you create weather phenomena.
They did find out, they said that they stopped it, but because they found out like with the widespread usage that you could affect the weather and other geological and biological.
It's crazy. And of course they stopped. They didn't do that anymore. They were like, oh, no, we can't. We're messing with the weather. That's unethical.
You're talking about how they can't do it just one individual, traumatizing them. And so what you see is our collective social media and the things that everybody's pushed to watching on Netflix or whatever, those TV shows become that traumatizing factor. And I found a very interesting pattern. I don't know if you guys might have picked up on it, but whenever the whole Charlie Kirk assassination stuff was happening, and there were some very big announcements being made on the world stage, concurrently, literally like each weekend, up to the weekend of Charlie Kirk's funeral, was the Alien Earth series being released on Prime or whatever.
Oh, that's fascinating.
And it's really interesting because the topics of the Alien Earth thing, it covered a variety of these avenues for the 2045 agenda and the alien disclosure stuff, because in the Alien Earth series, there was the AI tech moguls, there was the synths, the android things, there were the mech people who were like half robots, and then there was the alien factor, and there was a variety of the aliens being introduced, and they all had their own little intertwined agenda as they're all competing to basically kill all the people in the show. And this show was being released at these big, high focused traumatic moments of the past year. And so there's a really interesting tie with a lot of the themes of that Alien Earth show, and it lining up with these big spectacles such as the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the funeral. There was certain other, I can't recall them right now, but if you guys go back and research this, you're going to find it very fascinating.
I want to know why it's on, like it was on Instagram and they weren't being flagged. Like there were videos that you could watch on Instagram, but yet I post something that's, conspiratorial and they take that down. It's like, why were we all watching the Charlie Kirk assassination?
Yeah, that was a heavy thing to see too.
Like
and I don't know what to make of it. I mean, the dude might be hanging out in Valhalla or something like that, whatever the case is, shout out to
I think they got him.
Vivek Ramaswamy. No, not Vivek Ramaswamy. I get all these Indians confused. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, that one's so multifaceted. And then when they tell you like anything but look at what happened here, please. Yeah. I want to look at it more, but I'm content right now knowing that we'll never know.
By the way, I'm looking at it here. So Alien Earth, I didn't watch it, but it's so what I'm constantly looking out for lately is the divine feminine. Mm-hmm. You see it in absolutely everything. You can see based off of a quick image search of the show, not only do you have the big inverted V on the Earth, it's a green glowing V on alien Earth, which is the inverted V. I mean, the V or the inverted triangle is a symbol of the womb. It's a symbol of the divine feminine. You'll see that pop up over and over again. We had it in the last 2 Super Bowls, but also you have a female lead. Right. So, I mean, it's not really too crazy because you had Sigourney Weaver in the original one. She was a strong female lead, but you're getting that a lot. Our media has taken this massive tilt towards strong female leads.
Girl boss.
Girl bossing. Yeah, it's exhausting. And then if you have a masculine character or a male character, he has to be gay, which is what you got in the Stranger Things series. It was like at the very end, all the women were kicking all the ass. The dudes got spears with knives on the top of them. And the only guy that was allowed to do anything was a gay dude. So it's like everything is about the divine feminine, the feminization of men, the masculinization of women. It's this big inversion.
It's the ancient primordial witches. It goes back to the first mermaids that are actually mentioned in the Book of Enoch. The wives of the Watchers were cursed to become basically sirens, and so there's also a spiritual element to, you know, this realm we live in is a literal womb for spirits, and I think that's why the evil's trying to manifest and birth its children, and so to speak. And then, you know, the Most High uses this realm as a testing ground to see who truly love him and who, you know, don't. And, you know, it's kind of that realm, but there's a very specific genetic element to it, which, you know, ties to one last clip I wanted to show you guys. Sure, you know, we want to give a little credence to, you know, Jeremiah's namesake, Rob Skiba, who is one of the, you know, way ahead of his time, foremost Nephilim researchers. And it's very important because he was predicting that the time that we live in, the way that we start to associate this time with the corruption that happened in the days of Noah is because of this genetic manipulation. So if you guys wouldn't mind me just showing this clip, and maybe we can tie it into what we were talking about.
People who have done timelines specifically related to the pre-flood world with the patriarchs. So, as well as my own personal research on it, I came to the conclusion that the Genesis 6 experiment took place in roughly 3550 BC. So not too long. If you believe creation started at roughly 4,000, some say 3,900-ish, it's not too long after the creation that we've got this event taking place in the days of Jared. Jared's name means descended. They named him because that's when the angels descended, in the days of Jared. So if my calculations are correct, that took place in 3550 BC. One of the reasons why I do not believe in multiple incursions is because I don't think that Genesis 6 even remotely supports it, even in the verse that people use. For instance, especially if you take into the account of the testimony of the Book of Enoch, landing in the days of Jared, you end up with the Nephilim were in the earth in those days. What days? The days of Jared. And also after that, what is that? The days of Jared. When the sons of God came unto the daughters of men in the days of Jared, and they bare children to them, the same, now this is important, the same ones that the author's talking about, the ones who were born in the days of Jared, were the mighty men that were of old. And the Hebrew word there is olam. Olam's translated 136 times as forever and 110 times as everlasting. In other words, very, very long time ago. So the same guys that Moses is talking about were from a very long time ago. They became the men of renown. And the reason I'm focusing on Olam there is because Moses is writing this about 850 years after the flood. He would not have used the word Olam to describe the Nephilim that they just saw in the land of Canaan just recently. The same became the mighty men that were of Olam long, long time ago. When you read in the book of Enoch about the severity of the judgment of the watchers who participated in this experiment, you get to chapter 68 and you see that Michael, the mighty archangel himself, looks at the severity of the judgment that is being imposed on the watchers, and he turns to Raphael, and I'm going to paraphrase, dude, wow, no one's ever going to do that again. And if you read it for yourself, I'm not going to take the time to read it just for the sake of, moving forward here. But it says that he's looking at this, and it says that he's trembling because of the severity of the judgment that he's seeing. And later he says, man, nobody else is going to do this in the bottom verse there. Those guys are receiving such a severe judgment that for another angel to see that and then commit another incursion, they'd have to be dumb and dumber on acid, in my opinion. That's how severe it was. If Michael, the archangel himself, is like trembling in his boots, it's pretty severe. So I want to talk about what I believe is the Genesis 6:4 pre-flood return of the Nephilim. When I was synchronizing the texts and looking at them, I'm not going to go through all of this in the red there, but I'm just going to go through the black. This is the Genesis portion of Genesis chapter 6, 1 through 18. We see in the first 4 verses that angels were mating with women. And that's backed up and synced up with the text you see there in red. Genesis 6, 5 through 7 shows how God feels about the resulting violence. He's obviously very upset about that, syncs up with the text that you see there. Scenario right here, I happened to read this quote in Dr. Judd Burton's book before I met him. He said, "Despite the loss of their physical bodies, there is reason to believe that the giants' spirits continued to exist. In this state, they were and are demonic entities. Like other sentient creatures, they have an eternal spirit at their essence. Therefore, the Nephilim and related tribes of giants never really ceased to exist. Only their physicality was lost." And I agree with that 100%. And I looked at that, I thought, wow, what if that's the formula? What if corrupting the image that God created and called good and very good leads to opening forbidden gates that brings about the creation of Nephilim? Everybody likes to use the definition of Nephal, or from Nephilim comes from Nephal, to meaning to fall. But as we see in Strong's 5307, it has a number of other meanings besides just to fall. I think all of them are appropriate. I think when we think of the term to fall, that's a reference to something being corrupted and falling from its original state that God called good. When you corrupt that, you've fallen from that state. Did you follow that? It's not. You can't reverse it. Once it happens and it passes down to reproductive cells, your offspring is going to have genetic modifications passed on to them. And again, I believe the scriptures tell us exactly where the post-flood Nephilim came from. For instance, we have scriptures like this. This is one of those cases where we read about God commanding the Israelites to utterly destroy them, and he names them. Namely, the Hittites, the Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Okay, well, where did they? I believe Numbers 13, 27 through 33 also backs up the no multiple incursions idea when it says that they saw people of great size there, the Canaanites, of course, we saw the Nephilim. The descendants of Enoch came from the Nephilim. So these are Nephilim who came from other Nephilim. Nephilim who came from Nephilim. Dr. Michael Heiser goes into a little bit more detail on that.
So basically, to sum up, the reason we have all of this push for mRNA technology and all, hey, this is one of the OG skulls. This is a Joe Taylor casting. If you guys are familiar with Joe Taylor's work.
This is the female, I think. I have another one up here, and it's like you can tell, kind of. I'm pretty positive this one, the male. Jake, you could correct me if I'm wrong. Oh man, sure. I don't want.
Imagine! Oh snap, that'd be crazy.
Man, let me just say, thank God for people like that. Yeah, because his work, I saw you were referencing like a Douglas Hamp work, L.A. Marzulli, all the guys that kind of laid the groundwork to make sense of the Bible that the church wouldn't or didn't teach.
Paved the way for retards like us.
Well, it's
standing on the shoulders of giants in a good way.
Yeah,
but who cares about like our podcast? I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what I'm trying to get at is like the understanding of the Bible.
Yeah.
So those passages, right, where that your dad is reading and saying like, "Yo, destroy them all." Before, I've been in the church my whole life, and I'd read that and I'd be like, "This Old Testament God is kind of a," and there is no good answers from the church. But you have these researchers, these intense researchers that can come and explain these things. And then when they're explained, I can read the Bible again and go, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. As a matter of fact, this is not just metaphor. Actually, there's metaphor in there. You can read it metaphorically and get something out of it. But this is a history book. This is everything.
Yeah. Dudes like Skiba made it really easy for me. I wasn't raised in the church. I wasn't raised Christian at all. And I had been accustomed to the Western ridicule of Christianity and like sort of the thinking, the reductive thinking of Christians. And then by the time I had an experience that oriented me towards Christ, when I started to research it, I was a conspiracy theorist long before I was ever a Christian. I was introduced to that worldview or a Heiser worldview or these people, L.A. Marzulli, et cetera, et cetera. And I came from a conspiracy background. So when I arrived at Christianity, I went, this makes really good sense. This makes perfect sense.
I got to a point where I was like, I left the church and I was like, I'll never go back. And then, you have conversations with people that about the Bible and like things like that will get brought up. And I said to God at one point, I was like, you got to explain this to me because I can't move forward unless this is explained. I don't get it. In one portion, you're a God that is just, righteous, and everything you do has reason. And the other side of this, I'm looking at and you're saying, kill these babies and these goats, like
wipe out these crops and everything. Yeah.
Is a holdup for me. And then boom, like just like I kind of prayed that. And then just a cascade. He's like, oh yeah, stupid. Read this, watch this
crazy,
video.
Because when I showed up, I was like, what's the problem? I get it. You got to kill them all. I understand. I had no problems with it. It made sense to me, dude. That's funny. On that topic too, once again, another new age thought leader who, take it with a grain of salt. It's just interesting because of this Days of Noah thing. But Manly P. Hall, esoteric philosopher, lecturer, expert in Hermetic, Platonic, and mystery school traditions. Dude died in the 80s, but he had a book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. He claims that ancient civilizations received advanced knowledge from what they interpreted as gods, angels, or divine teachers. I would say, lowercase g, gods, fallen angels. Yeah, we're tracking. We're saying the same thing. He claims that post the year 2000, ancient knowledge would re-emerge, right? So that's just that Days of Noah concept, this re-emergence of these things. And that these ancient teachers or fallen angels, right? He just listed them in the same breath, would be accepted as cosmic intelligences, space homies, in other words. So I just find that fascinating that even from that angle where he was, he's still pointing at this era as being one where these ancient concepts would reemerge. What concepts? The concepts that were taught to man of antiquity by fallen angels. He just didn't use the word fallen. And even, fallen's not necessarily a biblical term, but they're cast out. And so, you imagine they fell down.
I got a question for you guys, and I don't want to offend, but do you agree with the statement that your dad made where there was one fall and they saw what happened? Because I'm listening to it and I'm like, yeah, no, that's good evidence, but
I mean, he definitely makes a really strong point.
It could be an underestimation of how stupid, or not, maybe an underestimation of how stupid people can be, entities can be, these angels, but also maybe an underestimation on what they're getting. Because why
how
would
strong
they
of a drug worship is?
How strong is worship that they're gonna do that they've made this pact,
Well, two answers. One is that I don't get offended by anything. Jake knows that. And then second of all, I mean, my dad always said, if you don't believe me, do your own research. And, he would research everything. I barely saw him at home. That's how crazy it was. So he was always looking for things in the Bible and things that match up. And Jake would be, he worked with them for many years, my dad. And I was doing music. I never expected to be doing the show, but when they killed him at the hospital, I said, this is too important. And, we're blessed that we're reaching the generation that he always wanted to reach, which is like what you guys are doing. And I hope that answered your question.
Well, I mean, I think that he brought up some really good points, and I'm just wondering, are we drawing a delineation from the Watchers and from the rebellion?
Yeah. So I think the premise of are they falling again or are they going to fall again could be the better question, because I do think there's a premise set in Revelation that the dragon comes down and he's wroth with the woman. And I think there is a likelihood that there will be another incursion in the future. But I think that's why we see so much of the genetic manipulation that kind of, it's like the hand off the wheel type thing that the fallen ones are pushing through mankind, because there is such a great punishment. And I think it gets to the point where eventually the dragon or Hasatan himself comes down and possibly does one last insemination and creates, some kind of antichrist, or, and perhaps that is the second incursion. But Rob made a very strong case that the genetics of the fallen, the Nephilim, came through one of the wives of Noah's sons. And he makes such a strong case for that because the whole X chromosome premise that these genetic mutations, these manifestations of Nephilim come through the line of Canaan. And so when you trace that throughout time, and then we compare that to the modern telling and like the X-Men movies and how, even in the beginning of the X-Men movie, they go, oh yeah, the mutation comes from the mother. And I believe that's significant. And the reason I don't believe there is multiple incursions until the very, very end where the Antichrist is seated or as a moonchild or whatever, however that might play out. And specifically because of the Y chromosome and the necessity of salvation tracing all the way back to the original Adam, because it's through the second Adam that all men are saved, right? Well, if mankind or a man in today's world, even, one of the sons of Enoch or whatever, if their Y chromosome traces back to a fallen angel, technically they're always going to be an abominable creature. They're always going to be a disembodied Nephilim demon spirit when they're dead. But that's why I think the X chromosome element of Rob's research is so important, and it ties into what they're trying to do and manifest with mRNA now. I think the Most High wanted them to slaughter all those Nephilim because Og of Bashan, there's interesting Jewish legends that talk about Og of Bashan clutching onto the top of the ark, and he was the only survivor of the pre-flood Nephilim. And so he obviously was a king in Canaan and had to be, put to death by Joshua and the good old boys. And I think that's partially why so many of those tribes had to be completely, utterly slain, the men, women, children, and even the animals, because there was a Y chromosome tracing back possibly to a fallen angel. And so that's what had to be completely eradicated. And I think that Y chromosome, or that tracing back to the father angel, is what had to be prevented. Because if you think about it, if somebody has the X chromosome from a mother that's corrupted or, from a Nephilim, but they still have that Y chromosome that traces back to Adam, they're still considered a son of Adam. And that's why I think the Most High wouldn't allow for the second incursion to dispense another set of Y chromosomes that need to be completely wiped, like with a flood, right? I think the next thing tied to the Antichrist, the mark of the beast, and the reason those who receive the mark or, worship the beast or receive the number of his name, they get a separate and almost slightly different punishment than just the wicked who die apart from the Almighty. They just didn't care, they're just annihilated. I believe there is a truth to the annihilationism aspect of what hell is. Like those who are just ignorant and die, boom, they're just, the second death is literal. They're just done forever. But there's a different definition of the punishment given to the fallen, the people who receive the mark of the beast, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. It says specifically that they're the ones that are tortured day and night forever and ever, and the smoke of their torment ascends. And so what happens to those people and whatever they do to themselves to corrupt themselves according to the Antichrist is it's all tied to Hasatan wants to put his seed in us. He wants our genetic code to contain him, and it's tied to fallen angels. Why I think it's also tied to the promise of everlasting life and longevity that is being sought after, because there's a reason that in the garden he kicked Adam and Eve out when they partook of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Is he said specifically is so that they don't partake of the tree of life and live forever and be basically like Hasatan is, like the fallen ones, the watchers. With these fallen angels, they live forever. And so that's why I think there's a difference there between the corrupted X chromosome that's passed down that manifests in all these Nephilim. And by the way, if somebody today might happen to be related to one of them, I think they could be still redeemable. But I think that's what the mark of the beast is it's that reinsertion of the Y chromosome of the fallen ones that creates this unredeemable nature of mankind. And that's why there's this big push towards, the genetic code being unlocked with AI. If you guys have looked into DNA sequencing and how like the 4 letters that are in it, like it's like a Yod Hey Vav Hey literally in our genetic code. And he's written a cipher in all of us, and it's all about corrupting that. And that's, what Rob would talk about. He was one of those guys way back in 2012. Actually, we got a massive attack on our account, got shut down for like a few months because we posted one of his old videos where he was predicting the way that the Antichrist inserts himself into mankind is actually going to be through evaluation.
And that got his channel demonetized.
Yeah, that's
forever.
not a. Wait, what year was that?
This is like 9 years ago.
2012, 2011.
Okay.
Way before the
that was like not the height of it, but we were well in the throes of anti-vax, being a culturally significant terminology. I wonder sometimes, because it seems like, I agree with you. There's this effort to get these genes in us. And I wonder if it's because, how there seems to be a real genetic component to what entities will interact with what bloodlines. And it almost seems to me like certain genetic lineages have ties to certain entities, if it's generational iniquity or otherwise, old deals that were made with these entities. I wonder if the genetics speak to the ease with which a spiritual entity can inhabit and interact with, a people. And what I'm wondering is, there was this line, I forgot what it was. Oh, Crowley, right? Where he's talking about future generations would contact these entities through technology rather than ritual. I agree with the genetic manipulation aspect of the vaccine, and people really speculate as to graphene oxide or something like that being inside these vaccines. And if we look at transhumanism, which really does appear to be integrated somehow with this end game, that we will transcend our, sort of ever rotting biological state and integrate with technology to some extent. These entities have been able to engage with technology every step of the way. Every time we have a development in technology, like if it's the landline phone and you pick it up and all of a sudden there's voices in the static, or a tube TV, when you lose signal and all of a sudden something starts talking and you could see images inside the static. A spirit box is very much the same thing, right? Spiricom. Over and over again, each time there's a breakthrough in technology, it seems that these entities can interact with it until basically they go, whoopsie, and then they kind of adjust the settings or whatever.
TVs is a big one too.
Yeah, plasma TVs. So what I'm wondering is, if you have Neuralink, and this is actually, we'll go back, I want to talk about, before we wrap up, this kind of end game of the MK Ultra program, the implants, frequency conducting, and where that all goes. But if you have a Neuralink, and it's interesting because you look at motherboards and computer chips and you're like, that looks like a sigil, right? That happens so often. If these things have no rights over us because a debt has already been paid by the sacrifice of Jesus Christ, and so we have authority over scorpions and serpents, and we can cast these things out in his name. But what about technology? And I wonder if that's a little bit of what happens then if they can interact with that technology. You can't cast them out of a piece of technology. They exist within frequency, and this thing is a conductor of frequency. Now it's in your head. Neuralink is now in your brain. What then, when it talks about men wanting to die but not being able to, does this thing supersede, God's natural system by putting in a piece of technology into you? It doesn't have rights to you, but it has rights to the technology. The only way that you're going to exercise it is by exercising this physical object from your flesh. And I wonder if that is where they struggle to, maybe let's say possess people who are not of a specific bloodline. Ashkenazi Jews apparently have a disproportionate rate of schizophrenia among them. Schizophrenia, we already talked about that being a spiritual disposition. Something has access to that people group, in my opinion. Do you no longer need to rely on genetics if you can use technology to sort of hijack that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a different beast. I believe.
Yeah, it definitely seems like they're going from the old world way of doing things, which is a lot of the blood cult magic, adrenochrome crap, which they don't mind exposing right now, which is why it's actually the apocalypse. We're living in the apocalypse, which means the unveiling. And what that means is the Great Reset that they were signaling to us back in 2020, it is happening. And the Great Reset means they're moving from the old world blood cult system of doing things to a new technological empire of control. And, so I think it's kind of both. I think because of AI, they're able to tap into the frequency of, cells. It's like the speak kind words to water and it crystallizes in a very nice way.
Yeah.
They figured out all that stuff. And there's been all these occultists and scientists all throughout the decade, previous centuries that had a pseudo knowledge that was probably passed down through the occult. But because they're now taking all that information, they're plugging it into AI, they're now able to, mass produce the effects that they want and really fine tune it, like I was talking about earlier. And I think that's how the marriage of those kind of topics come together, is they're incorporating the old blood cult magic crap that they didn't really maybe understand how it scientifically worked, but they are tapping into the actual matrix code of reality, which, by the way, I think there's an element to how that explains the synagogue of Satan and these controllers that are dispensing transgression to the masses so that they rise in control. And it's because it's literally the people that understand that, like Hebrew, for one, the closest language to Hebrew is the chemical language. And so what they understand is that there's an empirical matrix code reality, which I would point to the Torah, which it's the way that the Almighty communicated to mankind, and it's this onion of truth. And so what the enemy of our souls has done is people have taken this information, this matrix code of reality that defines blessings and curses. It defines the things that create generational blessings and curses, the iniquity that's passed down to the third and fourth generation versus, those who, if we love him, he blesses us to the 1,000th generation. Well, because they've unlocked this code of blessing and curses, and it is based on the frequency that we, emanate into the world based on our actions, our thoughts, our words, and they've figured out how to utilize that so that maybe we go into this perpetual cycle of self-cursing, or perhaps they've recognized, like, oh, if somebody, follows this particular pattern or frequency of activity or thought, it will cause this actual physical impact on their body. And then this ties into the whole pharmaceutical industrial complex of the people that worship Apollo, all the doctors that, swear an oath to Apollo with the Hippocratic oath. And the way that mankind is being used as guinea pigs for the men in white lab coats. And so that's what the ancient priests used to be, where they were basically experimenting on mankind through rituals. Well, now the men in white lab coats are tapping into this kind of pseudoscientific testing of mankind with the pharmakeia, the witchcraft, these compounds that were never that can't manifest in nature naturally, and then they're seeing what happens when they inject them into our bodies and all that. I know I'm kind of going around in a circle here, but it's all connected, and I think that's why right now the current medical establishment of the world, and we saw that first flexing of the big serpent back in 2020 with COVID and the pandemic stuff, is we're quickly heading towards a state where those who you obey, you worship. And if it comes to the point where a man in a white lab coat says, hey, I want you to do this to your body, I want you to do this to your genetic code, that'll not only affect you in today so that I can make a little bit of this moolah, which is the root of all evil is the love of money, but not only for their own selfish reasons, but they unknowingly are following this pattern because of maybe their own personal ambitions. They're kind of reverberating out this impact that could eventually corrupt the genetic code of mankind for anybody who's down your family line, and I think that's where it gets kind of crazy, is how, like, where do we draw the line? Where do we stand up and be the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? By the way, I can never recall their Hebrew names, but the guys that stood up when the trumpet blew and everybody was to bow down to the golden idol. I think that time's coming very soon, as we see Agenda 2045 roll out, as we see the AI, implementation. Literally, you're talking about meat husks and how demons are like supposed to use these meat husks. If somebody only obeys what ChatGPT or Grok tells them to do in every thought and action, do we literally become meat husks?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is something that Top is really passionate about. And I think I learned a lot about this from him, but it was like, if you're not willing to say no in the most menial of exchanges, how on earth are you going to say no when they ask you to bow the knee to any number of things? And so
Yeah, we've been given an excellent training ground for the last 6 years, maybe even before then, of practicing saying no and then saying no again. And then when people get mad, you can say no now and then continue to escalate. And it doesn't have to be rude. It's just a no. It's I do not consent. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to wear this mask. I'm not going to put that in my arm. I'm not going to say what you tell me to say.
Right.
No matter what you can offer me. Simple as that. Most people can't do that now. So like you're talking about, Jake, we're coming to a time where the consequences are going to be much more severe. And if you haven't practiced that muscle, if you haven't practiced it through conspiracy, through comedy, through just truth telling,
through culture, isn't it fascinating that like as we march ever closer towards the end of days, supposedly, it seems that socially we're being asked to be more tolerant than ever. Right. So it's like things are getting crazier and the spiritual implications of things have never been more obvious. And at the same time, they're telling you not to say this. Don't say this or don't say that, because if you do, you're intolerant, you're sexist, you're homophobic, you're racist, you're any of the ists. And it's like, how could that thing be true? That we live in this beautiful time of tolerance and acceptance of all people, of all walks of life, of all choices and all these different things, but we're moving ever closer to these end of days. It looks to me like that is a thing. It's getting you to accept the smallest of things, and don't step out of the lines at all. Don't say a thing you're not supposed to say. Don't laugh about this. Don't make a joke about that. Don't say this because it'll be perceived as offensive and racist and all of these different things. And it's so that when shit actually does hit the fan in such a way that it matters that you speak up, you're not going to speak up. You're not going to speak up. You didn't speak up before. You didn't say anything when it was easy. When it was easy to call somebody, like I grew up in the 90s. Calling your friend gay was just like
or
the mill shit. Yeah, run of the call. That's why part of our branding is dangerous retards. And it's like, as I even have on my holster here, I don't think you're going to get flagged on YouTube for this, but there's like this repeating text, and over again it says dangerous retard, dangerous.
People explaining that to the cops. If
I know that's not going to be good,
dude. I think we are the same person, because I have this. This
is crazy.
Oh man,
I understand what's happening.
I like you guys.
Yeah, you guys are all right. But you know,
you guys are retarded.
Yeah, we are. So, what's the status quo? The status quo is satanic. Right? So if you're in alignment with God, if you believe that Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, and you're not afraid to say that, that makes you dangerous to the status quo. And the retarded part is, I've already established I can't read. I move much more in spirit and compulsion. There are things that resonate with me, especially in this time where like conspiracy theories, pick one. There's a million at any given point in time. There's 1,000 things for you to go viral about, for you to latch on about, become the anything guy, whatever your thing is. If you want to become the guy, if you want to become this guy, it's all there. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm saying I only move towards what I feel moved towards. Like I'm not an intellectual. You might see me here able to regurgitate a bunch of, crap that I've learned over the years. It happens if I ask the Holy Spirit to guide my words and make it so that somebody out there is listening and will be drawn closer to God because of the things that I said here. That's it. And so sometimes I'm able to go on a tangent. I feel like it's not me. It's just God being like, good job, dummy. I got this from here. So I'm not reading the grimoires, dude. I'm not reading the text. I'm not sleuthing through the files or anything unless I feel compelled. So in that way, there are plenty of intellectuals in our space. I'm a retard and I've got my purpose. I think God uses fools to dethrone the wise. He uses unlikely characters to do X, Y, and Z. All I am is a dude who is willing to say the crazy shit and who just wants to be a good servant. And so in that way, dangerously that's our whole thing, these days. I think we're in a place where no matter how good your information is, we're about to be given so much, you're not gonna be able to keep up. And the only hope you have of keeping up is the Holy Spirit. The helper who reveals the truth to you, and who guides your thoughts. This is the thing that you need. If you don't have that, good luck, because even AI, we've crossed this threshold where I don't even know what's real when I look at it anymore.
We just saw a guy get crushed by a weight?
Yeah, dude, it was like a kid doing a bench press, and it was supposedly 400 pounds. It slips and it crushes his chest. And we spent 3-4 minutes before the show arguing with our buddy about whether or not it's even real. And so it's like that, even the most mundane of, I watched a video of a cow grazing and I was like, oh my God, that's not real. That's a fake, that's a fake cow eating fake grass.
This isn't real right now.
You need discernment, and you gotta ask the Holy Spirit to fill you with that, because otherwise I think
you gotta be
retarded.
Yeah. I told Jake a long time ago that this was right when AI first started getting popular to where us could access it. And I said, it's going to be more powerful than DNA. Watch. And then now it is. Now you can, there's have you seen those things that are like, frame your friend for doing crimes? It's like stealing meat. There's a real, I'll have to find it.
But start framing you for crimes, dude. Hell yeah. That's awesome.
What I'm saying. But why is that even a thing? So I just think it's, I hope they stop some of it.
I don't know if it's going to stop. I think we're on a train that's on tracks, but
we're in full blown crazy. It's like I think Owen Benjamin, when we talk about him, there was a point in his arc where he was getting very frustrated with people that were copying his work or things that I don't know, let's say he's talking about the Jews, right? He's been talking about it for 10 years. Now it's popular. And old Owen would have said, these people are not paying homage to who created the work. And I get it. And it's right. But I've also learned a lesson from him that he's learned. He's kind of taught me the lesson. It's like, they can't create something new.
Yep.
They can pick this up. I'm already busy on the next thing. I am unpredictable. I am a creative and I'm moving. I don't know what I'm going to do next. And I feel like that's an aspect of humanity that's beautiful. And that's probably why God created us, not to repeat talking points or do things that have already been created. It's just about making something that's unique to you, that's new. And in that way, AI can only reproduce the things that have been created.
Yeah.
So you'll see a lot of cool stuff that's already been created.
Because we created a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, because we created that shit. And it's kind of up to us to be unpredictable and move in the direction that
move in the spirit, dog. Move in the spirit. That's the thing too. If they really do have this AI representation of you, right, where it's a model based off of predictability, your geo tracking, your habits online, and then somewhere in this digital realm, there's this little.
I bet you that guy wouldn't say nigger right now. I bet you he wouldn't.
Well, that's my thing is, if you want to be able to juke that system, you have to move in the spirit. You have to move where you're compelled to move, not where your habits bring you, not go through the same old shit you always go through. There's something in you, right? And ideally, that thing is the Holy Spirit. You ask to be filled with that. That thing guides you. It compels you to move left or right, or go here, do this, say this thing to that person, go and talk about this right now.
Or don't do it.
Hit the brakes, stop, don't move. Whatever it is, you move in that and you get really good at moving at that. And that little AI digital dude is going to look, super retarded. He's not going to know where to go.
It's really profound that you're saying, because I think it's very important as we enter into the surveillance state and we see AI is able to track where you go, what you do, your habits. It gives you the things you should do in your habits, that unless you have something to break that system, a pattern of thinking, then you're going to go where they can just pick you up down the road because they know you always go to that place. But, unless you have that draw to do something, led by the Spirit of the Most High, then, things are going to get pretty dark. But I think it's also very exciting because in the midst of the darkness of the world, there's a principle that with every Elijah, there's a Jezebel, and every Moses, there's a Pharaoh. And so there's a balancing act, I think, spiritually on the world, that whenever the enemy's side gets ramped up and they get all these super cool tools and powers, I think he's looking down and he gives us something. I think that's the parallel that happens in the days we're living in, is we get that supercharge, we get that ability to hear his voice better and day-to-day things. And I love what you guys are saying. I think it's very important. And I think you guys are just awesome in general. I think this show's been really cool. You and Jeremiah are like doppelganger
same
or whatever.
I want to thank you guys for coming on Skiba News Nation. I mean, I could have a conversation with you guys all day, But
I appreciate the invite. We were pumped, man, when we got the invite. It's great that you're carrying on the legacy. I mean, that's that's in some ways it's kind of the dream. God allowed us to do this thing. we have kids and it's like, damn, dude, maybe one day my son will be like, all right, yeah, I'm going to do this too. And that would be like, I don't know what's more meaningful. I know you said you were pursuing a career in music, and it's like, whatever you feel called to, everybody, God makes everybody unique, but look where you're sitting and look what you're doing and look what you're furthering. What you're furthering is the kingdom of God, and especially in these times where it seems like it counts now. It always counts, but it counts now maybe more than ever in history. Just looking at what's on the horizon, if it really is. I know every generation thinks they're there, but I think we have a lot of good reasons to think we're there.
And you're doing it in a unique way too. Like I could sense that you are in the same vein as we are. Obviously, you see what we say and do. It's not orthodox, but we're reaching an unorthodox audience.
Yeah,
that otherwise wouldn't be reached. And not like I'm not trying to say like, oh, like we are such great that. It's just what it is, man. This is who I am. This is who we are. And this is kind of what we're doing. And the fruits show themselves. So
yeah.
I see you guys moving. I mean, you're moving obviously way before we are in the same direction. So we're kind of like following you. So it's been awesome.
Not to Texas though, because I'm not going to get arrested with you guys.
Where can our audience find you guys?
All platforms, dude. Nephilim Death Squad, except for Rumble. We've turned a corner and we said Rumble sucks ass, and so we
Rumble does
abandoned it entirely. It sucks, dude. It had this like uptick for a minute and it seemed promising, and then YouTube like lowered the censorship stuff, and then Rumble was like, we're only good for Dan Bongino. So screw Rumble. But otherwise, you can find us absolutely anywhere, and our Patreon is the best place to find early access to tickets to Bohemian Grove when we do it. And we promise Patreon first dibs. So the reason I'm mentioning it is because there's a high likelihood, given the growth of our Patreon, that the tickets will just never make it to, because you have limited capacity, won't make it to the general public. And if they do, it'll be slim pickings. So patreon.com /Nephilim Death Squad.
Yeah, we'd love to attend.
Number one, we'd love to have you.
We don't know.
We have no idea. So the last one, we got canceled.
I mean,
we didn't even talk about that, but we
got kicked out of a town.
Yeah, this whole town basically excommunicated us. They told us that we were either going to get rid of Owen Benjamin as one of our headlining comedians, or we weren't going to do the show at their theater. So we said kick rocks. And we left, and then we had to get a new venue. So, needless to say, that trend repeats itself. We have a lot of trouble securing a venue because we're psychotic.
The venue we had last time, they no longer exist. So now we're trying to find another one.
They offered us another place, but they're flying like a LGBTQ flag outside, and I'm like, you don't understand. They're not going to accept us there. This is the same problem we had last time. So, but when it does happen, it is in the Lady Lake, Florida area. In fact, that's where we are right now. We're live in a Standard Coffee Shop in Lady Lake, Florida. I highly recommend, if you're somebody who's in the area, come here. Don't stab us. Come hang. Shoot the shit. We had an audience member show up, and we were just like, sit down. You're on the show now. So be careful. You don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, man, we'd love to have you guys for Bohemian Grove. I think that would be fantastic.
Also, if you guys do want another plug, t-shirts, that's actually my main business. Let's see if we show here. Yeah, like all these signs and stuff like that. That's based off my t-shirt designs, things like that. That's what I do. I'm a graphic designer. So go to toplobster.com if you want to pick up some dope merch and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get some merch from you. I only wear black.
I'll send you some.
But yeah. And hopefully we can come on your show, and maybe our audience will come over. We'll have part 2 of this conversation over there.
We thought that was, we got our wires crossed before the show started. I believe you guys have our calendar, right? After this show, dude, find a day that works for you, book it automatically. We'll run this back. We'll do it again on our channel.
Awesome. Yeah. And we're honored that you'll come to TrutherCon 2026. And
yes,
it's going to be epic, dude. I see big things. Us truth seekers got to stick together, because there are a lot of fake ones out there. But you guys are both real ones.
Well, thanks for having us, guys. This is a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. If you like what we do here on Skiba News Nation, please like and subscribe. And also share with others so we can grow the biggest truth-seeking community on the internet. Huge shout out to all of our Patreons out there. If you like bonus content, you want some extra Skiba News Nation stuff, please go to patreon.com /Skiba News Nation.
Son of the legendary Rob Jeremiah Skiba.
It's like they don't even want to wake up.
He's on a quest for truth.